Okay guys, in this lesson, we are going to try and add the game over panel along with its logic. If we can do that in the same session, that's neat. Okay, so first off, let's open the canvas and create a new panel, or just duplicate the menu panel right here. We can rename it to game over. Okay, perfect. And this one will be a bit darker than the two others. So let's make it like so. Okay, perfect. We can also change the text displayed on the button and say retry. Okay, perfect. We can rename this to retry button. Cool. And we can also change the callback of the button. And we are going to do that soon. So for now, let's just remove the callback from here. Okay, perfect. Let's now open the UI manager because we want to edit it a bit. We need to add our brand new game object, which is going to be the game over panel. So let's call it game over panel. Okay. And at start, we want to hide the game over panel. So like we've done for the game panel, let's disable it. Okay. We also want to create a new method here. So let's make it public. It's going to be retry button pressed. And this retry button pressed method will only be in charge of reloading the scene. So it's the same logic that we've used in the player detection here, if you remember. So we can just grab this line, go back to the UI manager and paste it. But to be able to use it, we need to add the Unity Engine scene management library. Perfect, we're pretty much done here. We also want to add a method for showing the game over panel. So let's create a, let's say public method for now. Let's call it show game over. All right, perfect. This method will hide the game panel. So game panel.setActive false. And we'll show the game over panel. So game over panel.setActive true, like so. But when do we want to do that? We want to do that when the game manager state has changed to game over. So we need to subscribe to the game manager event, which is sent whenever the state has changed. So let's subscribe to it in the start method. We can say game manager.onGameState changed plus equals game state changed callback. Okay. And if you remember well, we also need to unsubscribe to this event whenever we destroy this game object. So let's call onDestroy. Let's paste this line and remove the plus to a minus to unsubscribe. Cool. We can now create this new method. And we are going to create it under the update method. So let's say private void game state changed callback, which will take a game manager.gamestate argument. Perfect. Let's rename this variable to game state. I think it speaks more for itself. Okay. If the game state equals game over, we want to show the game over panel. Okay. So now that we can show the game over panel, we need some way to change the game manager's state. This is what we are going to do in the crowd manager. So let's open the crowd system right here. In the update method, we want to check if we have any more runners available or not. So we can say if the runner's parent .child count is less or equals to 0, it means that we don't have any more runner. So we should trigger the game over. So to do so, we can just call game manager.instance.setGameState, game manager.gamestate, game over. This way we are setting the game over. But this logic is placed in the update method, so it might be called on every frame. To prevent this, we can just say right here, if the game manager instance is in game state, we can do this logic. Otherwise, so if it's not in the game state, we can just return and don't do anything to prevent calling this method again on every frame. All right, let's now go back to Unity, and we will need to specify some stuff here in the inspector. So you can drag the game over panel and drop it in the inspector. You can also select the retry button and drag the UI manager, drop it in the callback here, and select the UI manager retry button pressed. This way we can actually restart the game when we press the retry button. So let's try this. Okay, I think it would have been better if we've added more enemies here, so we can try. Let's select the chunk manager, the level 0. Let's click it, and let's open the medium chunk enemies 20. This way we can change the amount of enemies that are available in the group. So let's hit play. Okay, now there are 20 enemies and there are 12 runners, so we should trigger the game over. Perfect. One thing here is that the player is still running, but we can still retry. You see, when pressing the retry button, we've retried the game. We've reloaded the scene. So now let's prevent the player from moving when the game over is triggered. Okay, let's go back to our code here. Let's open the player controller script. And it's perfect because we have already subscribed to the on-game state changed event from the game manager. So in the game state changed callback method, we can just say else if the new game state equals game over, we can stop moving. This way it will prevent the player from moving when it's not the game state, when the game is not playing. So let's try this out. Hit play again. Okay, let's start running. Cool. The player has now stopped, and we can also retry the game. Perfect. Now that we've added this logic, in the next session we will see how we can add the level complete screen to prevent just reloading the scene whenever the player crosses the finish line. Awesome, see you there. Okay guys, so now we are going to add our level complete screen along with the logic that goes with it. So let's start. Under the UI game object, select the canvas and duplicate our game over panel that we've made in the previous lesson. So let's hit Ctrl D. We can rename it to level complete, like so. Perfect. Let's enable it so we can easily edit it. Okay, cool. So it's going to be dark too. The retry button is going to be renamed to something like next, maybe. Perfect. We can also color the button to something greenish. Perfect. In this case, we can change the color of the text to white. That's perfect. It's just to differentiate it from the retry button. Let's rename the retry button to something like next button. Okay, perfect. Regarding the callback of the button, I think we can keep the same callback because the goal of this next button is going to be to reload the scene. And this is already what we are doing with the retry button. So let's keep the same callback for now. Okay, perfect. Now I think let's add a text to the level complete. So let's duplicate the text of the button, drop it under the text, the level complete panel right here. And we can just write, congrats, you've made it. Cool. So now we can just center it by pressing the center anchor right here and maybe make it bigger. So let's press F in the scene view, press T, and make this text a bit bigger. Maybe you can also make it higher, like so. Perfect. Our level complete panel is now made. So let's add its logic. Let's disable it first. Okay. So how are we going to do that? We can select our player And under our player detection script, if you remember well, when hitting the finish line, we were calling the scene manager class and the load scene method. So instead of doing that, we can just comment this line by adding 2 slashes. We can keep the logic for increasing the level index. And instead, we want to call the game manager dot instance dot set game state. This will allow us to change the game state from the player detection class. So we can change the game state to level complete. Perfect. Now that the game state is level complete, we can open the player controller class and prevent it from moving again when we are switching to the level complete state. So we can say else if the game state is the game over, or the game state equals level complete. This is the same thing as adding a new if statement, like so, else if game state equals level complete, stop moving. This is exactly the same thing, but it depends on it's your own preference. If you prefer only using one line, it's your choice. If you prefer 2, it's also your choice. So yeah, do what you want. Cool. Now let's open the UI manager script right here and add a reference to our level complete screen so we can show it whenever the level complete is triggered. So let's add a new serialized field, private game object, level complete panel. Perfect. Now we can create a new method to show our level complete screen or panel. So let's make it public too. Public void. You can also make it private. Actually, it doesn't change much because we are going to use it in this class. So private void show level complete. Okay. So when doing that, we are going to hide the game panel. So game panel.setActive false, like so. And we are going to show the level complete panel. So level complete panel.setActive true. Perfect. But where are we going to call this method? If you remember well, we call the show game over from here. So it's going to be the same logic for the show level complete method. Okay, so let's add a new if statement. So else if the game state equals level complete, we want to show level complete. Perfect. Let's go back to Unity. And before hitting play, I think we want to specify some stuff here. So let's click on the UI manager and let's drag the level complete panel onto its field right here. Okay, now I think that we can hit play. But before that, let's reduce the amount of enemies that we are going to face, because if you remember, when hitting play, we have 20 enemies and only 12 runners. So there is no way for us to win. Okay, you see, we lost. So yeah, let's change the amount of enemies. So open the prefabs folder, chunks, medium chunk enemies 20, enemy group, and make it maybe 5 enemies. I think that's enough. We can also make it 0 actually. So let's hit play. And 7, okay, let's add 20. So let's remove 3 from them, okay? And when hitting the finish line, perfect. The runners stopped. We've shown the level complete panel, and we can also press next to restart the level. Awesome. In the next session, we are going to try and add more levels to see if the logic of the levels is actually working properly. Because for now, it's only one level that's looping. So we don't know if we can actually generate more levels. So let's do that. All right, guys. In this session, we are going to make 5 levels to see if the call loop of the game is working properly. But before doing that, I noticed last time that we've got an issue with the level text here. So when we hit play, you can see that we are playing level 3267. But when we finish the level, see what happens. Okay, so I'm pressing next and we are now playing level 3959. It's a bit much, don't you think so? So let's fix that. This bug happens because the player is continuously hitting the finish line on the level complete state. So to fix that, we are going to select the player right here under the gameplay game object and open the player detection script. Okay, cool. Here it is. Now go down to this condition. So now we're constantly telling the game manager to set level complete along with this, constantly increasing the level index. So we are going to fix that now. We want to be able to detect the doors only during gameplay. To be able to do so, we are going to add one line, and it's going to be a condition, so an if statement. If the game manager.instance.isGameState, then we can detect the doors. That way, we are preventing the detection during the level complete, game over, or menu phases. Okay, let's try this out. So I'm getting back to Unity and hit play. Okay, so play. We are playing level 3959. So now the next level should be the level 3960. Let's see if this works. Okay, so I'm waiting a little bit. Hit next. Perfect. Cool. So it's working now, guys. Okay, we can now add more levels. But again, before that, let me show you a quick trick to reset the level index. So what we can do is open the game manager, and at start we can say player preferences dot delete all. It will delete all of the player preferences. So let's go back to Unity. Let's hit play. And now when hitting play, we can see that we are on level 3900. All right, let's go back. So quit the play mode and play again. And now we are playing level 1 because all of the player preferences have been deleted. Now we can remove this line from here. Maybe in another course, I will show you how to make a custom editor just to be able to delete the preferences from this menu here. It's going to be much more convenient. Okay, I think it's better to make another video to tackle the game loop, so adding more levels. So that's it for this video. Let's check that in the next lesson. Okay, perfect. Now that we've fixed the previous bugs, let's see how we can make more levels. All right, so let's open the crowd runner folder, and under the levels folder, let's duplicate our level 00, and it's going to be level 01 by default. Okay, so we can say that this level will have maybe instead of adding the enemies 20, we can create a new chunk. So Control D on this one, and let's rename it medium chunk enemies maybe 10. All right, so let's go back to our level. So level 1, select the enemies 10 right here. Maybe we can add another 10 enemies, and finally we can add the finish chunk. Okay, cool. We can create another level now. So let's select this guy. So let's go back to the levels folder. You can lock the project window by clicking the lock right here. It will allow you to see the levels constantly. And you can also create a new tab, so a new window. It can be a project one. You can drag it and drop it right here. And in this one, you can select your prefabs and chunks and also lock it. So this way you can have your levels and your chunks at the same time. So let's select level 1 and duplicate it to create level 2. Okay, so now I want to make a long chunk. So I'm gonna duplicate this guy. Okay, I'm gonna open it and add an enemy group. Okay, cool. Let's reset the Z value of its position. Cool. And it's gonna have maybe 15 enemies. All right. Then I can select the level 02, go back to our chunks folder, and this is this one. So I said 15 enemies. All right, level 2. Let's drag our long chunk and drop it right here, let's say. Cool. We now have 3 levels. Okay, let's try the loop with 3 levels. I think it's enough, actually. So we are going to select the chunk manager right here, drag the level 01 and the level 02. Okay, we now have 3 levels. Let's hit play. Okay, so now we have 5 enemies. I guess it's the level 1. So let's check this out. This one has 5 enemies indeed. So yeah, we are playing level 1. So let's complete it and see. Okay, so add 20 maybe, divide by 3. All right. It's going great right now. Cool. Now hit next. And we've got a different level right here. You can select the chunk manager right here and develop it. Then you can select any of your levels and compare. So now it seems like we are playing level 01 because we have a medium chunk with 10 enemies like here, and in another one with 10 enemies like here. Although we have 5 actually, but because we haven't changed the amount of enemies in the group, but that's okay. So let's hit play and see if we can play level 3 after this one. Okay, -3. And here we go. Okay, next. So now we have 15 and 5. So it's exactly the level 3, 15 and 5, even though it's written 10 here, because yeah, we haven't changed the enemies. So now we lost because we don't have enough runners. So we can change that, or maybe add a door just before the enemy group. Let's do this. It's going to be something you will have to do actually, because when making the levels, you have to test them and see if the level is playable. You can actually complete it, finish it or not. So yeah, playtesting is a huge part of game development actually. Okay, so let's select this one, and we are going to add another chunk. Yep, and it should have doors. So let's add another short chunk. Okay, let's call it short chunk 01. And the doors will have 2 bonuses. One with a product of 2. So if we start with 12 runners, we should have 24 runners after these doors. And the other one will be maybe a division by 2. All right, cool. So now we can select our level 02, drag our short chunk 01 onto this list right here. But instead of putting it at the end of the list, we are going to drag it and drop it just after the start chunk. Okay, let's hit play. Perfect. Now we have our 2 doors before the 15 enemies. So we can hit play. Now that we have 24 enemies, we are going to win. Okay, perfect. So we can add 20, -3, and perfect. But after this level, the game should loop and we should be able to play level 1 again. Let's see if that works. So maybe next. Perfect. Here we go. So even though the level index here is 4 and we only have 3 levels, we are able to make or create an endless loop. Got it? And that's basically what most hyper-casual games do. So yeah, perfect. In the next lesson, we are going to see how we can add sounds to our game. So yeah, let's do that. Okay guys, it's now time to add some sounds to our game to give it a little bit of polish. So I've been grabbing some sounds from this package. It's called Free Casual Game SFX package from Dusty Room. Thank you, Dusty Room. And yeah, I choose that one because it's basically free and because it has sounds that fit our game very well. So let's go back to Unity. I've imported it right here and selected 5 sounds that we are going to use. Okay, so let's get right into it. First off, I'm gonna create a new game object and I'm gonna call it Sounds Manager. Okay, cool. Then I can grab all of my sounds here, drag them and drop them onto the hierarchy. Okay, then I can make them children of the Sounds Manager. The first thing you want to do when you drag and drop a sound is to deselect the play on awake option. That way you won't play the sound right when you play the game. Okay? We are going to start by the button sound. To add it to the buttons, you are going to type in the search bar button right here. And you can also select the type of the search. So select type. Now we have our 3 buttons. So the play button, the next, and the retry one. Let's select them all at once and add a new callback for the on-click event. Okay, so now we can remove the search option, drag the button sound right here and select the play method. So now whenever we press a button, we are going to hear this sound. Let's try it out. Okay, I'm going to hit the play button. Perfect, heard it. Did you hear it? Okay, let's now add all of the other sounds. So I'm going to create a new script for the Sounds Manager right here. So let's go into our scripts folder and create a new script and call it Sounds Manager. All right. As usual, you can drag it and drop it onto the Sounds Manager game object to attach it to it. Okay, let's open it. Perfect. The first thing we want to do here is to create a new header for our sounds. So let's call it sounds. Okay, let's create a new serialized field, private, audio source. So this is the component that allows us to play the sound or to stop it or to increase the volume or the pitch. Cool. And the first one we are going to use right now is the door hit sound. Okay, let's add it. So let's call this variable door hit sound. Perfect. Let's create a method for playing this sound. So it's going to be a private one, void play door hit sound. Okay. When dealing with sounds, I like to decouple everything. Like the Sounds Manager will be responsible for playing the sounds only when he receives some events. That way it's decoupled and I can reuse this script wherever I want. So here, when do we want to play the door hit sound? Okay, like so. We want to play this sound whenever the runner or whenever the player hits some doors. So we can go to player detection right here. All right. And in this method, when hitting a door, we can add a new event. So let's do that. Let's first implement the system library, like so, and create a new header for our events. Then you can add a new event. It's going to be a static one, action, on doors hit. All right. Then we can go back to our method right here, and when hitting the doors, we can call this on doors hit event or action and invoke it. Like so. Then we can go back to our Sounds Manager. In the start method, we are going to subscribe to that event. So we can say player detection dot on doors hit, and we add our play door hit sound method. So play door hit sound, like so. We need to unsubscribe from it when destroying the game object. So let's call the onDestroy method and unsubscribe from this event. And we are pretty much done. So now we can try it out. So let's go back to Unity. Let's drag the door hit audio source into its field and hit play. Okay, let's try. All right, we are gonna hit a door. Perfect. Nice. Okay, cool. So now let's keep going on and add all the other sounds. So I'm gonna add the level complete, the game over, and the runner die. Okay, so let's duplicate this line. Let's make it runner die. Okay. another one for the level complete sound. Okay, I like to add the sound word when it's a sound. It's just a personal preference. And again, game over sound. Okay, perfect. So for the level complete sound and game over sound, there is a quick way of adding them right now. In the start method, we can subscribe to the game manager on game state changed event, sorry. So let's subscribe to it, plus equals game state changed callback. We're gonna do it the same way as we did on some other scripts. Okay, let's unsubscribe from this event again. Okay, and let's create the game state changed callback method. So private void, like so, and it has a game manager.gamestate argument. Okay, cool. So if the game state equals level complete, we want to play the level complete sound. Otherwise, if the game state is game over, we want to play the game over sound. Okay, like so. Cool. Let's try. So first we want to add all of the sounds in the associated fields. So the runner one, the level complete, and the game over. Okay, let's hit play. Let's try and lose if we can. I don't think we can, but let's try it. Okay, so maybe +5 divided by 3, I should have 4, and now we should die. Okay, perfect. The sound played. Now let's try and win to see if the level complete sounds, if the level complete sound plays. Okay. All right, I'm about to hit. Nice. Okay, guys, it's working pretty much well. Perfect. Now let's add the runner die sound. Okay, let's go back to scripting. So in the enemy script, we detect when we collide with a runner and destroy it. So in this same method, in the run towards method, we can call, but before destroying this game object, we can call on runner die or died and invoke it. Like so. Now we need to create this event. So let's go up. Let's add the systems library, the system library. Okay, like so. Let's create a new header for our events. And finally, we can create our static action on runner died. Perfect. Now we need to go back to the sounds manager and subscribe to this event. So let's create a new line right here. We can say enemy.onRunnerDied plus equals play runner die sound, like so. Let's copy this line and unsubscribe whenever we destroy the game object, like so, to avoid having errors or null reference exceptions. Okay, let's copy this method name. Let's create this method, like so. Okay, I don't know what keys I've hit, but let's remove this. All right. Okay, now we can grab the runner die sound and play it in this method, like so. Cool. Now let's go back to Unity. Okay, I think we've got our sound, so let's hit play and see if we can hear a sound when the runner is dying. Awesome. It's working, guys. Awesome. Let's try again. Perfect. Cool. We've added sounds. It was that easy. Okay, cool. In the next lesson, we are going to see how to add haptics. So it's basically just vibrations. Cool. See you there. All right, guys, let's now add vibrations to our game. This is an optional lesson, but it will greatly improve the user experience of your game, actually. To do so, I'm going to use this package, and it's actually $5. That's why I told you that was optional, but it's honestly the best package I've used for this, actually. So now let's go back to Unity. I've already imported the package. You can see the folder name here, Fat Machines. Then we want the phone to vibrate whenever we hit a door or whenever we lose a runner. So we can create a new game object and call it vibration manager. As I told you before, I like to decouple everything in my game. That way I can disable or enable anything I want. It's like a modular phone, you know? Okay, so let's go to our scripts folder and create a new script. Okay, let's call it vibration manager, or you can call it haptics manager or something like that. But yeah. Okay, let's drag it and drop it onto the vibration manager game object. Okay, let's open this script. So whenever we hit a door, I think we already have an event for that, and we used it in the sounds manager when we wanted to play the door sound. All right, so let's grab this line on doors hit, and let's go to the start method of the vibration manager. Let's drop it here, plus equals vibrate. I'm just going to create a vibrate method. Okay, let's add the onDestroy method as usual to avoid some null reference exception. Okay, and now we can create our vibrate method. Private void vibrate. Okay, cool. So this is going to be very simple. The Taptics package has a huge amount of methods you can call, but I'm just simply going to use the light one. So I'm just going to call taptic.light. And that's it. Only one line of code and you have haptic feedback in your game. I'm sorry because I can't make you feel this vibration, but you will have to try it for yourself actually. So sorry for that. It's the only thing I can't show you like visually. Cool. Anyway. Now I also want the phone to vibrate whenever we lose a runner. So I can say enemy dot on runner died plus equals vibrate. Okay. I also want, I think, the phone to vibrate whenever we cross the finish line. Exactly. So do I have an event for that? Okay, I'm gonna use the game manager event right here, like we've done for the sounds manager. So let me quickly grab this. Okay, now I can paste it here. I can also copy it and unsubscribe from it. And I also need to unsubscribe from the enemy event too, before I forget. Okay, like so. Now we need to create this method and we can grab it from the sounds manager too. So let's grab this guy and drop it right above the vibrate method. Okay, cool. Whenever we trigger the level complete state or game over state, let's add it for the game over state too. We can call the vibrate method here and here. Perfect. We are done. I think there is a debug line in the console whenever we vibrate. So let's see if that works. Play. Okay, let's hit play. Okay, there isn't. Anyway, trust me, it's gonna vibrate. Cool. Now that we have sounds and vibrations, so haptics, we need to add a settings panel to allow the player to enable or disable them, because usually some players play on a bus and maybe they are listening to some music, so you need to make sure the player is allowed to disable the sounds of your game. So let's do that in the next session. Okay guys, in this lesson we are going to see how we can create a brand new settings panel that will allow us to enable or disable the sounds and the haptics. So first off, you want to open your photo editor and create some sprites. The first sprite we are going to create is a container. So just select the rect tool, for instance, and create a container that will be, let's say, 256 by 256. Okay, perfect. We can also diminish the roundness of the corner, let's say. So let's make it 15. Okay, perfect. Cool, we've got our first sprite here. Then we want to create the sprites that will serve as buttons for our sounds and haptics. Okay, let's create a quick circle like so. Maybe let's make it 128 by 128. Okay, cool. And then we want a container. So we are going to make an iPhone-like button. Okay, like so. Cool. So I think it's the same color, so the other one won't be visible. Nice. Then you can rearrange them as you wish. I think the sizes I've made here are quite good. So this one will be gray, okay, like so. And then I'm going to duplicate both of these, make this one on the right side, or maybe you can just select both of these and apply a horizontal symmetry, like so. Then I'm going to make it greenish. Yeah, cool. Okay, here are the buttons we are going to use. So let's export them to Unity. Okay, here we are back in Unity. Here are the sprites we've just created. So I'm going to select the 3 of them and change the texture type to sprite. Okay, let's apply the changes. Then you want to select the rounded container one you've made and open the sprite editor. But when you click on it, it tells you that you need the 2D sprite package from the package manager. So we're going to do what Unity just said. So let's click on Window, select Package Manager. Then you want to select the packages, the Unity registry package list, and select 2D Sprite and install. Okay, perfect. Let's now close this window. And now we can select the rounded container and open it in the sprite editor. Perfect. So now we are going to create some borders for this sprite. This will allow us to resize it in the UI while keeping the nice rounded corners. Okay, so let's apply a border of 50 on the 4 corners, and yeah, we're good to go. Let's apply the changes right here and close the window. Okay, let's now create our settings panel. So under the UI game object, canvas, duplicate the game panel, for instance. Okay, rename it to settings. Okay, cool. And make it a bit darker by setting the color to black and increasing the alpha, like so. Let's make it maybe 80. Okay, cool. Now we want to remove the progress bar and the level text because we won't use them, okay? And let's create a new button component. This will allow us to close the settings panel. So let's call it close button, okay? Let's stretch it to fit the size of the screen, like so. We can hide it by diminishing the alpha all the way down to 0. And we can also change the transition type to none so that we don't notice a change in color. And finally, we can remove the text component from it. Okay, we now have our close button. Then you want to create a container for the settings. So we're going to create a new image component. Okay, and let's call it container, like so. Now we can drag and drop our rounded container sprite onto the sprite field here. Okay, cool, we have it. In the scene, press T to get the rect tool, and you can stretch the container. And you see now, even though we're stretching it or making it bigger, the rounded corners are still crisp. Awesome. Okay, so let's make the settings container about this size. Then we want to create a new text, or you can duplicate any text from our previously made text. So I'm going to duplicate the level text, for instance, drag it and drop it onto the container. Perfect. And I want to anchor it to the top of the container. So I'm pressing Alt to move it instantly. Perfect. Let's bring it a bit down. Okay, a bit below, and maybe rename it settings. Cool. Now we can rename it, sorry. So let's say settings text. Okay. Now I'm gonna make another container inside this container that will hold the sounds settings and haptics settings. So let's do that right away. Let's create a new image component and let's call it settings, or maybe sub container, like so. We can just make it darker just for the moment to resize it and place it wherever we want. So let's resize it a bit, maybe something like that. All right. And now we are going to use a new component, which is the vertical layout group, that will allow us to place our elements automatically. So let's add this component. It's the vertical layout group. Press enter. Perfect. Now under the subcontainer, you want to create two new images. So let me do that quickly. So let's make this one red-ish, and the next one will be maybe blue. Okay. So now you can see that it has created two images and has already placed them in a vertical pattern. To be able to better control this pattern, you can tick the width and height control child size options right here. So when ticking the width one, it will stretch the children of this same game object to fit the width of this game object. And we can do the same thing for the height. Perfect. Now you can add as many objects as you wish and it will fit them onto this container. But in our case, we only need two, one for the sounds and one for the haptics. Okay. Here under this game object, we want to add a horizontal layout group this time because we will have two elements. The name of the option or the setting and the button that will allow us to enable or disable this same setting. Okay, perfect. So we can already create them. So let's duplicate the settings text, drop it under this first image. And we also can create a button component like so. Perfect. Let's call it on maybe sounds button. Okay, cool. So now we can select our horizontal group and tell it enable the width and height options again, like so that we don't overflow. Okay. Now we can remove this one and duplicate this one. Perfect. Now this first one will be the sounds settings. Okay. So we can already set the alpha to 0, like so. And let's rename this to sounds, like so. Cool. And we can change the sounds button image to the options of image we've made in our photo editor, like so, and tick the preserve aspect checkbox. Perfect. Let's remove the text. We won't use it for now. Okay, cool. So now you can notice that the sounds text is way smaller than the button, and that's a bad thing for us. So let's remove this. Let's rename this one to sounds text first. And we want to add a new component. This component is the layout element, and it will allow us to make the text a bit bigger. So we can increase the minimum width of the text like so. Let's make it maybe, yeah, I think that's good. Maybe 300 pixels. Okay, cool. We can also diminish the max size just to fit the style better. Perfect. Let's now add a bit of padding. So maybe 20 pixels on each side. Cool. And yeah, it's already pretty much done. So we can also change the alignment, although it won't matter for now. Let's duplicate this one and remove the previous one. Okay, let's change this to haptics settings. Cool. Let's change the text here to haptics or vibration, let's say. All right. So we can rename this vibrations text and here vibration button. All right. So basically in the next session, we are going to see how to change this sprite, you see, like so. So when the player clicks on the button, it will change the sprite and enable the vibration, for instance. All right. So see you there. All right, guys, here we are again. So now in this lesson, we are going to implement a logic to the settings panel to be able to show it, close it, enable the sounds and enable the vibration. So these are the four main things we're going to do here. Okay, let's quickly change the color of our settings panel so it's a bit easier on the eye. Okay, let's maybe change the colors of the subcontainer like so maybe. Okay, we can also change its sprite. Yeah, I think that's cool. Perfect. All right. So first things we are going to do here is create a new game object, and you may guess that what the name will be. It's gonna be the settings manager, decoupling things again. Okay, let's open the scripts folder so that we can create our settings manager script. So let's create it, settings manager. Let's add the settings manager script to our settings manager game object, like so, because there are multiple ways you can add it from here or drag and drop it as you wish. And let's open it. Okay, so the first thing we are going to do is already add the Unity engine .ui library, because we are going to deal with images here. We're gonna change the image of the button whenever we press it. So yeah, let's go back to scripting. Okay, so first off, let's create a new header for our elements, like so. So let's start by the sounds button, let's say. So I'm gonna add a new field for the image, sounds button image, okay. Then I want to add another one for the vibrations, so maybe haptics button image. Okay. We also want a field for our, it's going to be a sprite, which will hold the options on sprite, and another one for the options off sprite. All right. So now let's create some methods to be able to change the sprites of the buttons. Okay. So the first method will be a public one, because we will attach it to the sounds button, void, and let's call it change sounds state. Okay, like so. So when we press the sounds button, we want to change the sounds state. So the first thing we want to do is to check if the sounds are enabled or not. So for that, let's create a Boolean. So let's create a new settings header. Let's create a new private Boolean and call it sounds state. Let's already create another one for the haptics. So let's call it haptics state. Perfect. So here, when creating the Booleans, you can notice that at start, the sound state and the haptic state are false. So there will be no sound and no vibration. This is not what we want. So at start, we need to make them true, like so. Okay, cool. Later on, we will see how to save the values of these Booleans so that if the player disables the sounds, it will always be disabled, even though he quits the game and comes back. Because yeah, it's kind of annoying to always have to disable the sounds if you don't need them every time you open the game. Okay. So if sound state, so if the sounds are enabled, we want to disable the sounds. Okay, otherwise, else, let's enable the sounds. It's that easy. And after that, we want to change the state of the sounds. So let's say sound state equals the opposite of sound state. That way, if it's false, it's going to be true. And if it was true, it's going to be false. Perfect. Let's create these brand new methods. So private void disable sounds, like so. And private void enable sounds. Okay, cool. So when disabling the sounds, what do we want to do? So basically, we want to tell the sounds manager to set the volume of all the sounds to 0. And we also want to change the image of the sounds button. And later on, save the value of the sounds state. Or maybe we will do that in this method actually, like here. Okay, cool. All right, so first off, let's change the image of the sounds button because it's the easiest thing to do. So we want to say sounds button image dot sprite equals options of sprite, like so. And if we enable the sounds, let's copy these two lines, drop them in this method, and we will want to show the options on sprite. Okay, perfect. But at start, we need to apply the changes depending on the sound state and haptic state. So here, let's say we're going to create a new method called setup. Okay, just setup. Let's create this method. Let's call it setup. Okay. Then, if sound state, if the sounds are enabled, we want to enable the sounds. Otherwise, we want to disable them. This will allow us to change the image of the buttons and so on whenever we start the game. Okay, now we can go back to Unity and try if that works. So let's drag our sprites in here. So the on sprite is this one, the off sprite is this one. The sounds button image is right under the UI game object, canvas, settings, container, subcontainer, sound settings, and sounds button. Cool. Let's already drag the haptics one. Perfect. And now we want to select the sounds button and attach a new callback for the onClick event. It's going to be under the settings manager, and we are going to grab the change sounds state method. So now let's hit play, and it should turn green. Exactly. Now we can press it and it's off. Now if we press it, it's on, and so on. Perfect. The vibration is not working yet because we haven't configured it. So let's now disable the sounds from the sounds manager whenever we press the button. Okay, so to tell the sounds manager to disable or enable the sounds, we aren't going to decouple things this time because you know how to do it. But we are going to add a reference to the sounds manager and call the method directly because it's a small game and you can do that like pretty easily. If it was a big game, it's better to decouple things actually. So let's add a new reference to it. Private sounds manager, like so. Okay, cool. And now in the enable sounds and disable sounds method, we can call the sounds manager dot disable sounds method. That doesn't exist yet, but we are going to create it. And same here in the enable sounds method, we can call sounds manager dot enable sounds, like so. And we can jump to the sounds manager script now. Perfect. Let's create these two new methods. So public void disable sounds, like so, and public void enable sounds. Perfect. In the disable sounds method, what we want to do is grab all of these sounds right here, like so. You can hold Shift and Alt to select the sounds, Control C, and go back to the method, Control V. Now we can say, for each of the sounds, I want the volume to be 0, as simple as it sounds. So we can grab this line and drop it here, and drop it here. On the enable sounds method, I want to do the opposite. So set the volume to 1. So set the volume to 1. 1, 1, and 1. Perfect. Let's now jump back to Unity. Let's select the settings manager and drag the sounds manager into its field, like so. Okay, cool. But one thing we forgot is the button sound. So let's go back to the sounds manager and add a new serialized field for the button. Okay, so let's call it button sound. Here we also want to set the volume to 0. And in the enable sounds method, we want to set the volume to 1. So let's select the sounds manager now. Drag the button audio source into its field, hit play. And now I'm quickly going to select like the level complete object, game object, for instance. And now you can see that its volume is 1. But when I pressed the sounds button, it turned to 0. And that's the case for all of the other sounds. So now let's hit back the sounds button. Okay, perfect. And all the volumes are now 1. Cool. Okay, this lesson is a bit longer than expected, so we're going to do the vibrations and opening and closing the panel in the next lesson. See you there. Alright guys, we are back here, and last time we've added some logic to our sounds button. Now we are going to do the same thing for the vibration button. So let's do that. Okay, so let's open our script and open the settings manager script. So in the setup method, we are going to apply the logic that we've made for our sounds button to the vibration button. So right below these lines, we're going to write if haptics state, then we want to enable the haptics. So enable haptics like so. Else we want to disable haptics. Okay, cool. So let's create these two methods, maybe down there. So private void disable haptics. Okay, private void enable haptics. Okay, we also want to create a new method, a public one this time, to change the haptics state. So we're going to attach this method to our haptics button like we've done for the sounds one. And I think we can copy this code like so. So copy it, paste it right here. But we are going to change the sound state to haptics state. And we also want to change the disable sounds method to disable haptics. And now here we want to enable the haptics. Okay. So let's invert the state of the haptics then. Cool. We also want to grab these lines and drop them into the enable haptics. Okay, so now it's going to be haptics button image.sprite equals options on. And here we don't want to call the sounds manager, but rather we are going to call the vibration manager. So let's say vibration manager, and we are going to create a variable for that. Dot enable vibration. Okay, cool. Or vibrations, or haptics, or anything you want actually. Cool. Let's also implement the disable haptics while we are still here. So here we want to disable the vibrations. All right. And here we want to say options of sprite. You can also change the comments, but it's useless actually, because we already know what we are doing, right? We're professionals now. All right, cool. So let's create a new variable for our vibration manager. All right, let's drop it here maybe. So it's going to be vibration manager. And finally, we need to add these two methods too. So let's open it. Let's create a new public method, void disable vibrations, and another one to enable the vibrations. Okay, cool. So when calling the disable vibrations method, we want to prevent this method from being called, or even if it's called, we want to return and don't do anything in it. We don't want to call this taptic.light method. Okay, so here we are going to create a new boolean, but let's add a condition in the vibrate method. So if, let's say, haptics, then we can call the taptic.light method. So when disabling the vibrations, we are going to set the haptics boolean to false. Okay, and in the enable vibrations method, we are going to set the haptics to true. Now the only thing we need to do is creating this haptics boolean. Okay, so let's do that. Private bool haptics. Cool. Awesome. Now we can try this out. So let's go back to Unity. Select our vibration manager And you can enter a debug mode that will allow you to see the private methods even though you're in the inspector. So let's click the three dots next to the lock and select debug. Now you can see the haptics variable. Okay, hit play. So for now the haptics are off. Now when you enable the haptics in the game, it doesn't do anything because we haven't attached our method to the button. So let's do that. Okay, let's go under the canvas, settings, container, subcontainer, haptics settings, vibration button. Here it is. Okay, so now we should go back to normal mode instead of debug, just to be able to better visualize the on-click event. And now we can add our settings manager class and select the settings manager change haptic state method. Cool. Now we can select the vibration manager again, set the debug mode and hit play. I forgot again to add the vibration manager. Sorry for that. So let's drag it and drop it here. Now when hitting play, it should hopefully work. All right, perfect. Now that's cool. So we can select the vibration manager and set the debug mode. So now you can see that the haptics are enabled, and when we click the button, it disables the haptics. Cool. It's now working. Okay, so let's now quickly add the option to show or hide the settings panel. Cool, all right. So we are going to select the UI manager game object. Okay, let's go back to normal mode because it's a mess like so. Let's open it and add a new field for our settings panel. So we can duplicate this one and rename it settings panel. Okay. So at start, we want to hide the settings panel. So let's say set active false. So this way we are hiding it. Now we are going to create two new methods, one for showing it and one for hiding it. So let's go at the very bottom of the script and create a new public method, void show settings panel. Okay, and another one, public void hide settings panel. Okay, these methods are going to be quite simple. The one for showing the settings panel is simply going to be settings panel.setActive true, like so. And the one for hiding it is going to be setActive false. Perfect. We now have our new two methods. So let's go back to Unity. And if you remember well, in the settings panel right here, we've made a close button. So we are going to add a callback to this event. So let's drag the UI manager and add the hide settings panel method. Okay, so now we need a way to open our settings panel, right? So just select the settings panel, hide it by disabling it, go to the menu and create a new button. This is the button that will be responsible for opening the settings panel. Okay, so let's call it settings button maybe. All right, let's make it 150 by 150. No, it's too big. Let's make it 100 by 100 and anchor it to the top left of the screen like so. So let's press F to focus it. Okay, we might move it a bit. Okay, like maybe, yeah, 100 and minus 100 on the Y position. Okay, cool. Let's remove the text component attached to it, and we are going to create a quick cog icon in Affinity or in your photo editor to use it in our game. So let's go back to Affinity. Okay, let me create a cog quickly, like so. Let's make it white. All right. And yeah, I think this one, maybe it should have 6 or 8 teeth. Okay, perfect. Let's export it now. Okay guys, I am back to Unity and here is the settings icon. So I'm just going to change the texture type to sprite and apply the settings. Now we can select the settings button, drag the settings icon onto the source image for the image component. Perfect. Don't forget to tick the preserve aspect checkbox right here. And yeah, we can make it maybe 75 by 75 pixels. Okay, perfect. Now let's assign our callback to show the settings panel. So let's add a callback to the onClick event, drag the UI manager again, and select the show settings panel method. And we should be all done. Oh, one thing before I hit play. Select the UI manager and drag and drop your settings panel onto the associated field. Perfect. Now we should be good. Let's hit play. Okay, so no errors for now. Let's hit the settings button and it shows the settings panel. Perfect. So now we can tick or untick the sounds and vibration. And when we press the sides of the container, we should close the settings panel. So let's try. Perfect. Awesome, guys. And we can still play the game, of course. Nice. One quick thing we can do now is save the state of the sounds and the vibrations, as we've said before, just to prevent some inconvenience with the player, you know, just to improve our user experience. So let's do that. Let's open the settings panel, and in the awake method, so let's create a awake method. Let's say sounds state equals player prefs, so to access the player prefs class dot get integer. So we're going to use an integer to save this data, and let's call it maybe sounds equals 1. Okay, so by default, if we don't have any value for the sounds key in the player prefs, we should set it to 1. Okay, that way whenever the player starts the game for the first time, the sound state is going to be equals to true. Perfect. Let's do the same thing for the haptic state, and here change the key associated with it. So let's call it haptics. And when we are changing the sound state or the haptic state, we of course want to save this data. In the change sound state method, let's say player prefs dot set integer to change the value of our sound key. And here we want to say sound state. If the sound state is true, we're going to save 1. Otherwise, we're going to save 0. So this syntax is the same as of writing this, let's say. So integer sounds save state, let's say, equals 0 for now. So if the sound state is true, then we want the sound save state to be equals to 1. Otherwise, we want the sound save state to be equals to 0. And then we can use this value to save our piece of data. But yeah, it takes much more lines, and this line is easy to understand. So let's use the same syntax for our change haptic state right here. Let's do something like so, and change the value at the haptics key. And here we're going to use the haptic state to check if we want to save the value 1 or 0. Perfect. Let's try it out. Okay, so now we shouldn't add anything in the scene. So let's hit play. Let's open the settings panel and disable the sounds. Okay, now it should have saved the value. So let's close this one and quit. Now we can come back to the game just to simulate a player coming back after a day or some hours. Open the settings panel and we can see that the sounds are actually disabled. Awesome, guys. Congrats. It was quite tough, quite long, but I'm sure you've understood everything. Like usual, if you have any questions, feel free to ask. I'm here to help. And be ready for the next lesson because we are gonna add some coins to the game. See you there.
Thank you for watching. Subscribe now and press the bell icon. Never miss any update.